I've had some phenomenal guests on the show. Conversations that made me stop, think, laugh, and honestly just feel inspired. The quality, the experience, the realness, it's blown me away. So we decided one episode just wasn't enough. This is the Top 10 series, a look back at the most relatable, impactful, funny, and learning-filled moments from the incredible guests who've joined me so far. And before we jump in, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Your 360 AI. They're changing the game in feedback and growth. Real conversations turned into real development. Yes, please. Because the world of work is changing fast and guessing just doesn't cut it anymore. Visit your360.ai to see how they're helping teams stop guessing and start growing. All right, let's get into it. This is the top 10 most relatable moments. We're revisiting the stories that made us all say, oh my gosh, same. The honest, messy, deeply human side of growth.
Not giving up. And that like makes me emotional to say, because there were a lot of times where I wanted to give up. I wanted to. There was a time in my early 20s. I'm not joking about this whatsoever. Shortly before I left the music industry, I was so disheartened, hopeless, and down on myself that I literally thought about becoming homeless. Like I was like, I feel like it would be better to not have a job and just live on the street than to feel this this longing that I have to do something that I feel like I was created to do. And thankfully, because of my connections with mentors and coaches and just really great friends, I didn't give up. And if I could go back and speak to my younger self, I would say the impact that you are going to have on people by raising your voice and just simply not giving up, one person at a time, it's totally worth all of the challenge, all of the struggle that you're going to go through. And you may not always do the things that you love to do, and you may not always do the things that you find most interesting, but it's all going to be worth it.
I'm going to try to do the short version of it. So like I said, high school was difficult for me socially. And I was also, it's so great we talk about mental health now, but we didn't talk about it when I was in school. And I went through a period of severe clinical depression, and it got so bad that I actually ended up flunking out of school. So I dropped out of school my senior year. Not a problem academically. I was always, doing the work, and that was never a struggle for me. But there were other things going on in my life as teenagers. Just life is very difficult. I can't even imagine kids who are dealing with social media now. I think that just would have really made my situation even more difficult. So I struggled a lot between when I left high school, that was February of my senior year, until I was 20-ish, 21-ish. I really didn't find myself. They were doing a lot of mental health interventions with me, but again, we weren't really talking about it. I didn't really talk about it. Somewhat, I was ashamed of it. Like, all my friends were going off to college, and I chose not to because I was just kind of afraid college was going to be a repeat of high school, and mentally I was not ready for that. So I started working, but almost the same patterns were repeating themselves from high school to the different jobs I had. So I really struggled from about 17 to 20. And what happened when I was 20, and remember I live in Orlando, Florida, I started working at Walt Disney World. And I'd always loved Disney. When you grow up in Orlando, someone in your family or a friend works there. So you're going to go. And so I'd always gone to Disney since I was a little kid. And I also I was in band in high school, so they have a very robust program that local high schools can come and play, and then you get free tickets. So we would just, I don't know how my band director talked the people in, our administrators into it, but they would get a bus and we'd all, go there and use our free tickets. I don't know how he sold that, but it was great. So I always loved Disney. And when I went back, when I went there when I was 20, for some reason at that point it clicked. I just loved being there when I was in my 20s or early 20s. You're just helping people from all over the world, and I was in merchandise. So a little bit of the retail part was still in me, merchandise. And then I was there from, wasn't really planning on college then. I thought, well, I'll try. And I was kind of still having the same issues with college that I had in high school, different reasons. But for some reason that time, the guest service of it, the just being surrounded by people that I would normally not see in my Orlando life, it was just really a fantastic experience for me. So
yeah. So a couple things. One is I realized that I'm really good at expectations. Being there was exactly what I expected. Somehow, like a lot of people, they go to boot camp and like, oh my gosh, this is so much. It was exactly what I expected. Somehow, that doesn't mean it was easy or hard. Like it was what it was, and it was hard and emotional. I don't know if I realized it then, but looking back on it, of how I did there versus how I've done at different phases in my life, and why I run my own company now, is I think actually I do really well in structure that I impose. I don't do as well in structure that others impose. And so, if you say you have to be here at this time and here at this time, and there's space in between, then very often I'm gonna not do anything in that space. Like if you're putting controls on me, then I'm gonna leave it to my own devices or something like that, rather than find good time to fill that space. Whereas if there's no expectations, then I'm like, okay, I'm going to fill every second of the day. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And so I think that's something that I've learned in retrospect, of how structured I can be now versus how structured I was then, that I do better when I'm imposing the structure. And so I think that's ultimately what probably led me to starting my own business.
But behind the curtain, I would also get to work and cry in my cubicle, especially in that corporate communications role, because, again, I had the check boxes. I was literally working in downtown LA. I could walk to the LA Live Center, walk to that Starbucks, I was right there in the thick of it. I was full-time in management. I was getting to do really cool things, but I also felt like something was so empty and so missing. I felt like they owned me. And not necessarily in particular, but just that corporate environment of, here's your laptop, here's your cell phone. We expect to see you for 10 hours a day. And also, if an emergency comes up in the evening, we also expect that you're available then, and so it was just, there, even on vacation, there was an expectation that you still kind of checked your phone a couple times or checked your email a few times. Like, you weren't really supposed to go on vacation for a whole week. And so it was just, in some ways I felt important, and that made you feel like, oh, I matter. But in other ways you kind of realize no, they'd probably just stick somebody else in my position if something, Lord forbid, happened to me and I didn't come back from vacation, and I started to realize I'm just doing the same thing over and over again. And I was in my 20s, and I would get to my cube and just feel empty. I'm sitting here, I was commuting an hour each way because my husband still worked in San Diego. I worked in LA. We lived in the middle and commuted. And so I was commuting an hour each way. He was commuting. And literally I felt like life was work. We got up, we were out the door by 5:30, before 6 every morning. I wasn't home until probably after 6 or 7 every night. We weren't eating healthy. We barely saw each other. We lived for the weekends when we had to do anything we wanted to do, plus all the grocery shopping, plus all the responsible stuff. And, we were spending way more money and more out of whack with finances, more out, it's just like everything was chaos. Like I never felt like I could rest. I never really felt like satisfied. I'm just like, this is it. Like, this is what I'm just going to do for 30 more years of my life. Like, I'm going to come here, I'm going to sit in a cubicle, work behind this laptop, pretty much doing the same thing kind of year after year. Like, yeah, there are some cool highlights here and there, but it's kind of like every year we have these annual meetings, you plan them. Now we have these things, like these are your assignments and you're going to keep doing them year after year. And right or wrong, they weren't the best company at wanting to embrace change. So a lot of times when I'd come forward with new ideas and things to be creative and exercise that muscle, they weren't always met welcomingly. I felt like I was going against the grain. And I'm like, I don't feel like God created me and gave me this passion, gave me these talents, this skill. I don't think I worked and put myself through college and worked that hard to sit here in this cube and just do this. Like that couldn't have all meant for this.
No, that's a great question, Candace. And I think that's the thing. Like, I definitely knew I was trying to mold myself and really fit in, right? And I think it doesn't just lend myself to, being in a crowd of men. Like, I think anyone can try to mold and like be a chameleon with whoever they're with, right? And their little friend groups. But what I realized from that, I self-reflect a lot. I'm very self-aware. Like, I try to like understand the different situations and experiences that I'm in and really sit with it. And so I really did. I sat with this. And yes, I realized that I was trying to fit in. But what I realized afterwards is I became a shell of a person. I lost me. I lost what I was really focused on. I lost what I was trying to do. And then what's even worse is that trying to be like a man in a male-dominated industry, I got called intimidating and not a team player because regardless of what we think and what we know, there are double standards for men and women. Regardless of where you are in your career, women have that for women. And that's what I've realized too, because I'm like, if I said that, and a man said that, it would be taken completely different from a man and or a woman. So the society bases do not stop at a man. They start and stop at a woman too. And so it's across the board that I realize like, you need to just be authentic with yourself and who you want to be. Who do you aspire to be like? Who do you like? Who do you want to, what do you want to be known for? And I really did shift my whole entire perspective. And I started really living for myself and being authentic and knew that if the right person wanted to take a chance on me, if the right person saw who I really was, I'd have those opportunities. I want to have to be somebody else. I could be who I am and people could see through that if they wanted to.
Yeah, I think, one was definitely this idea of how do I work as a professional and also be a mom? So when I used to think when I was younger that I had to choose, I could have a career or have a family, and I couldn't do both. And I think that, again, comes from my mother never worked. But I knew I wanted to work. And so I didn't really know how that was going to happen. But I worked for almost 10 years at a small liberal arts college. It actually happened to be the one that was my alma mater, but I left and then came back to work there. And I developed an entire student leadership development program while I was there. And that was the time when my kids were young. And when you work at a college and you're doing student leadership development, you have to be available to do that work when the students are available, which means nights and weekends quite often. And so I was working many, many, many hours. And thankfully, I have a partner who is very supportive. But what I had to learn to do was balance my time. I had to learn that there's a no inside every yes. So every time you say yes to something, you're always saying no to something else. And so if I took on too much, what fell behind, the no became the time with my family or my health, my sleep, all those things. And so I had to learn, how do I balance? And I did things very intentionally, like within that job, what control do I have over my schedule? Well, I made sure that I never worked 2 nights in a row. So I always was home one, and then maybe I'd be gone the next. I negotiated with my boss eventually to have a few hours off on Fridays to be home with my son after school. So there were things that I did in order to try to balance, but that was definitely a very challenging time.
This episode is sponsored by Your 360 AI. Developmental feedback turned into actionable growth. Let's face it, the world of work is changing fast, and if your teams are not sharing honest feedback, everyone's going to be left behind. Your 360 uses voice AI to really uncover those things that surveys just miss. It is real conversations turned into real growth. Stop guessing and start growing. Visit your360.ai today.
Now, that's a question no one's ever asked me, and I might have to think a second about that. I have high expectations of myself and big dreams, and one of the things that I tell other people is you have to increase your exposure, because when you have big exposure, then you can achieve amazing things. It's just if your world is small, you don't know what you can do. When I growing up, I've had amazing parents. I still have amazing parents. My mom was a social worker. She studied child psychology. She was a phenomenal parent, and I write a lot about her in my book. But I didn't know any woman with a real career. Let me not say a real career. I mean, social work and teaching, those are all real careers, but a woman earning a lot of money. I did not know anyone like that up until, I don't know when, the head of our business school in Bloemfontein was a female. That was pretty inspiring, and there were a couple of inspiring stories, inspiring things that happened there. But I think it's only once I started working at SAB and I saw some of these women, I'm like, I can do that. I can do that. And I just believe if I had bigger role models earlier on, I would have done way more. And that's why it's important to me that every single person needs to achieve their potential. If you've got a dream in your heart, you have to go for it. Because how can you open a door for somebody else? How can you be an example if you don't go for it?
I think it helps to back up, take a step back, because that only came from, I actually have to thank her, Denise Woods. So I was going through coaching, that summer, and the person who did my demos, the first set of demos in February 2017, he says, you're a little slurry. And because I was in a corporate environment and I didn't have a microphone that picks up every last little nook and cranny of your mouth, I didn't have to be as articulate. So he said, I suggest you spend some time with Denise Woods. Wonderful woman. She coaches dialects for movie stars on set and blah, blah, blah. Second session in, she goes, David, do you have a lot of stress in your life? I said, do I have stress? Of course I do. Well, she says, whatever's going on here is coming out here. I thought, that's not good, especially in the business I'm in. So I started to go down a mental health journey because I had scars from for 10 years of being bullied, right? So, and that affected my work and everything else. So it wasn't until I started to go down that journey that I had like epiphanies of my self-awareness. And even on my careers, I was always running away from something as opposed to going to something, which is a very significant mindset, right? I was always leaving something. This is bad, I got to leave. As opposed to, I have a vision after I graduate, I want to go here, right? So now I'm just like all about telling people, and I use the Wizard of Oz analogy of having an emerald city, right? And if you have specificity of what you want that emerald city to be, because, for Dorothy, it's like, get to Emerald City, get to the Oz, and Wizard, and he'll send me back home. How do you get there? Yellow Brick Road. So if you don't know what as specific as possible, so that's why I said, well, when I went into voiceover, I knew I didn't have any acting experience. I had no performance experience whatsoever. So, but I knew business, and I knew, how to be freelance because I was before. So it's just a matter of learning the business and trying to make it happen. But I had enough drive to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. It works for me. I get to stay home and blah, blah, blah. So that's where pushing the boulder, it's like it takes a lot of energy. I tell people who are looking, I'm looking for a job. Okay, well, if you don't make a job out of looking for a job, you ain't going to find a job. And blasting out 50 or 100 resumes on Indeed every day is not going to work because it's spray and pray. You got to be a little bit more strategic. And if you don't know yourself, what motivates you, what kind of work you want to do, how do you define what your Emerald City is? And that's what guides. And I learned this very early on when I was independent commission sales rep. I went to Windsor, Ontario to go to a store, and I drove past a small little gift shop. And I thought, okay, I have a gift line. I could go in and sell them some candles or whatever, and $200 order, make $20-$30, and Bob's your uncle. But then I'd have to go back to him like 3-4 times a year and get calls, and this was broken. And so just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I try to have these sort of guiding principles, because if it doesn't align with your yellow brick road, that's cool. I could take that webinar and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but that's 2 hours and it's $50 and da-da-da. Will it actually help me get to where I need to go? And that took 30 years to get there. It took my thick, if I could bang it, you can't hear it. Very thick skull. It took me a long time. I knew a lot of things, but it took a long time to get through the skull.
I still didn't really want to be doing that, and I tried very hard to position myself in that organization to get other roles. But it was also very hard because I didn't really have great sales numbers, because I'm brand new rep in a completely new industry. And at the same time, I'm a brand new rep. I'm in a completely new industry, and we're in the middle of the thick of the pandemic, right? So I didn't really have many options, right? So it was at this point where I start to say, okay, now also I have some other things going on in my life at this point too. So when our company got acquired, we were supposed to move to Charlotte. So we were supposed to move from New York to Charlotte because Charlotte would have been perfect. It would have been right in the middle of my territory. A lot of our leadership in other parts of the company were there in Charlotte. And I sold my house all ready to move to Charlotte. And then when the company got acquired, I decided to stay back in New York. And we had some problems with our apartment. We rushed into buying a house that we couldn't afford. And I was in then I got this new sales job. And basically, I was bleeding money for the entire, because I wasn't making really commissions. We weren't selling much with COVID and everything like that. And, it was we were in the red big time, month after month after month after month. And that's when I was like, okay, I need to start doing something on the side. And I was like, I'm going to do a podcast again, and I'm going to figure out this time how to monetize the podcast.
I think the number one thing I always tell my clients is think about what's on your someday list. What are the things you're always telling your kids that you're going to do someday? What are the things you're always telling yourself you're going to do someday? And instead of just putting them on a someday list, figure out how to make those somedays happen today. And it's easier than everybody thinks, and it's cheaper than everybody thinks. And so I specifically help people with hacking their time and finding house managers. And before we got rolling, we were kind of catching up on your house manager situation. And so it's people hear the term house manager and they think that's something that they want to have someday. And they think oh, that'd be nice. I'm putting it on my vision board. I'm putting it on my dream board. I would love to be the type of a person who has a house manager someday. And I tell them anybody can get a house manager now. It's so much cheaper, so much more accessible. So it's you could start off with 5 hours a week. And then you find those people who already know your family, or they already are doing something. And you're like, hey, would you be interested in taking on a little more responsibility? I really need help with laundry, right? So it's like you already have a nanny. Like we were talking about au pairs, like you already have somebody that's coming and helping out with kids, and ask, would you be interested in layering on a few more responsibilities, like this many more hours per week? I'll pay you this much more. Maybe they're not, but maybe they are. And so just like tapping into those people and the strengths that people already have. Like if they're already a good fit personality wise, chances are their skill sets can learn the thing you want them to learn. And so the idea of a house manager, it's not like Mr. Belvedere when you live in a mansion someday. Like it's different now. It's so accessible. And now you're in Colorado, I'm in Arizona. We get to hang out with each other and have a conversation like we live in the same town and we're having coffee. So we're getting to do all this connection now digitally. But the thing we can't do is like, you can't drop off a casserole if I'm sick. You can't pick up my kids from school if I'm in a pinch. We can hang out together. We get to build this relationship and like build our businesses together and be mom friends together. But we can't do those things that you could do when you're in person.
I think I did have a bit of that magnetic pull towards this sort of thing. But I also think a lot of times people become more passionate about sharing their story and lessons to help other people when they've overcome their own challenges in a certain area, right? And I think I've been through many challenges, but from a career perspective, I was in many jobs where I wasn't happy. It didn't take, the job wasn't really taking advantage of my strengths. I was bored. I was frustrated. I felt like I couldn't move up because I wasn't taking the boxes. I felt like I was often holding myself back because of things that I perceived as weaknesses that really turned out as strengths in other areas, but I just didn't know it. For example, one thing people always laugh about is somewhere earlier in my corporate career, I'm working for a large insurance company, and as a product manager, doing a lot of stuff with spreadsheets, which I'm pretty good with spreadsheets, but I'm not a super spreadsheet master like a lot of nerds out there. And like I said, I was decent, but I wasn't that good. It wasn't that great of a fit for me as a job. Meanwhile, I'm really good at networking and making a lot of friends around the office. And I'm always the one organizing lunch and happy hour and getting people together. And I'm having a good time, but I'm certainly not I'm not extremely productive at work, and I'm not getting promotions. And it's frustrating to me. And I'm thinking at the time, I wish I could stop socializing because it's holding me back. And no one there values that. The people I'm socializing with are like, it's cool, we have friends. But no leader there is going, oh, wow, look at this guy organizing lunch. We should promote him. No, there's none of that, right? And so it's almost frustrating to me that I can't stop myself from being this social person. And some people identify with this. I'm sure you have many listeners who are, introverts who are like, what the heck? Like, just stop, just go sit down and work. But it's just not how I'm wired. But I find out years later that, that can actually be a strength when you put yourself in more of a position where it's valuable to bring people together. And since then, I've built a business, not just as a speaker and a facilitator who likes to start conversations, but I've hosted conferences and events. I run a membership community, as you know, you've spoken in that community. And it's all about bringing people together in a really inclusive way and creating belonging in an environment, something that I love doing. But early on, that was just like, this is just a kind of a fun thing that I do. I didn't know that is a skill. So one of the things I love to talk about a lot is like, hey, I went through a lot of frustrating times because I was working in jobs that didn't suit me or didn't fit my strengths. It took me a while to get that figured out. No pressure. You shouldn't feel bad if you're 25 or 35 and you still haven't quite figured that out. It's not a big deal. You still have time. But also, we need to be reflecting all the time on our strengths, our weaknesses, or we'll say our areas for development, right? Developmental opportunities. And those energizers are things, the work that we really love doing and the work that we really don't like doing. And then asking, like, are there adjustments that I could make? Is there a career I could be moving towards that could take more advantage of my strengths, that would involve more work that I love? With the full recognition, by the way, that no job is perfect. Very few people get to do work they love 100% of the time. I've recognized all my strengths. I've built a business that I love, but there's still probably 30% of my work is like admin stuff that I don't want to be doing, right? Some of those things you can't necessarily avoid. That's fine. But understanding, like, are you more of a people person and a connector? Are you more of an analyst, analytical type person? Would you rather be sitting in front of a spreadsheet? That's up to you. And then if you're working in a corporate environment, can you have a conversation with your manager about it to say, hey, I've been really thinking about my strengths. What do you think my strengths are? Can we move, can I adjust my role or move more into something that leverages that more?
This whole, like, having it all thing.
let's talk about that a little bit, because that's what is going through my mind is that we can't have it all, right? And during that time, you were, I suppose it might have looked on the outside like you were having it all, the mom and the doctorate and the work and the, everything's going amazing. But what had to give? There must have been things that you were like, this, it has to just give.
Well, sleep, obviously. Babies don't sleep. And my kids, neither one of them slept through the night reliably until they were 2. So sleep was an issue. There are entire doctoral classes, I will be totally honest, I don't really remember what I learned. Like I know that I knew it at the time and what I needed to know to get through the class, but I keep saying at some point I'm going to go back and reread all of my papers so that I can remember what I learned. And my husband is an absolutely saint. He's an absolute saint. He spent so much time with the kids. He would take them out to the park for hours on end so that I could write papers and work on my dissertation and all of those kinds of things. And I didn't do very much social during those years. I mean, I really was just hunkered down. It was work, family, school. So it was really, really, really hard. We also, we were really lucky that we had the means to start to hire a housekeeper. So we brought somebody in to do kind of the heavier lifts on cleaning the tubs and toilets and floors and all of that kind of stuff so that we wouldn't have to deal with it, because that is really time consuming. And we made the decision that the time was better spent on family than on cleaning. And so, we made that financial decision to invest in that way. So it just, it takes a village to get someone through a doctorate. It takes a village to raise children. We're really lucky that we have incredible people around us who gathered up and supported us and didn't feel bad when I would leave hanging out with people to go sleep and things like that. Yeah.